Good morning, everyone. I have Henry from Asia Expedia, so thanks for making it today to share the experiences of scenario-based planning and what if, and how it can help the businesses. We have traditionally been used to a lot of environments which we use in our CFO office, and one of them is planning, forecasting, budgeting, and analysis processes. Over time, we have seen a lot of innovation which happened, which Kurt was referring to in terms of mobility, in terms of cloud, in terms of innovations on hardware, and so we have come to a stage where the new idea has emerged as per ANAPLAN. So we are one of that new ideas, which is there on the market, and it's spreading quite widely across different companies around the globe. So my objective here today is just to introduce, and then I will invite Henry to share the experiences, as a part of the process in Asia Expedia, and then we'll take the questions after that. As CFOs, we go through this entire cycle of planning processes within the organization. So it starts with strategic planning processes and portfolio analysis processes. We do our quarterly review of those numbers, and we prepare the board and management reviews, which goes across to for analysis purposes. And finally, we build up a rolling forecast environment within the organizations. So this idea has not changed for a long time, but what is coming up from thought leaders in performance management is that we should have more scenario-based planning processes. So it's not about one budget numbers which we can rely on. So we can build new triggers, which happens as a part of next year's forecasting processes, and these triggers can be used in the new year. An example is like maybe currency rates. Today morning we were speaking about introduction of GST in Malaysia. So how these scenarios is going to impact the businesses is something which is of great appeal to group financial officers and CFOs and every part of the businesses around the organization. So we see a growing trend, and we see larger CFO consulting organizations focusing on building parallel budget scenarios for the new year and then producing that for the new year. So this process, or similar processes on what if, a more scenario-based EPM processes, the traditional environments, which we had for planning, forecasting, is not able to cope up, for organizations. So what is being done by finance organizations in Asia is to dive down to Excel, the good old Excel, and then start, plugging all the numbers across to the Excel and then giving back to the business. In some industries, this is happening on a weekly or on a monthly basis. In some industries, this is happening on a quarterly basis. But this scenario-based process and triggering of these processes are not going to go away. So the traditional use of Excel within the enterprises have grown. We have a study which CSR has done and which is going to come out very soon in terms of the Excel usages because of these analysis and how the traditional technology has not been able to address it. Now this is what we see from an industry perspective. In my industry, in planning forecasting industry, where I service the CFOs, we have seen the complexities growing at a very rapid scale, over the last 3 decades. But the business complexities require the technology complexity to cope with it. In planning forecasting, the last innovation which has happened is around 15 years back. So most of the products which we use today are built around 15 years back. So it's like using Nokia at the time of Apple. So that's what we are doing today. So we didn't want to come up with one more planning solution to the market unless we have an innovation, and that's where we thought we need to innovate on the planning forecasting environment so that we give that capability for the board, the CFOs, and the respective C-level management teams. That's one of the prime reasons for us to come up with the product which we will discuss. And what does it do? It can do immediate what ifs for organizations. It can do scenario-based analysis based on multiple scenarios which you build within the organizations. Revenue forecast, which is a bit more robust, and it can get down into the operational planning process. I don't want to discuss more about it, but it can do a lot of things, which we were not able to do traditionally from the finance point of view. The earlier session was about cost and supply chain management. So how do we link the supply chain across to the cost and sales forecast? The sales forecast sits on a set of Excel spreads which goes across to the manufacturing flows, and these manufacturing flows may create inventory, basically because the insight of that information is not clearly visible across the product line. We have grown our customers based on these apps around the world, and in the last 4 years, we have grown at 200 to 300% over years. Across different organizations, we have very large customers like HP with 30,000 users across the globe, using 8 billion cells with nanosecond and multi-second responses from it. So that's on the technology side, and probably I will quickly show you analysis. Maybe I can use this. See, you can navigate from your existing Excels or systems across this environment, and maybe for the time being, I'll just go into long-range planning and how we can create multiple scenarios and use that within the enterprise. So there is an impact analysis in which I wanted to see my multi-year plan, my 5-year plan, and I have certain parameters which is defined for this multi-year plan. If I go into my product growth, imagine I wanted to increase my product growth by X percentages. So sorry, I need to log in. So here I have my budget scenarios, where I have assumed high growth for next year, and I have a geographical expansion which I have planned, and also for the segment and channel and seasonality for this particular industry, I have just kept it as standards. There is a conservative forecast, and also there is an aggressive forecast which I define as a part of it. For example, in here, maybe I want to say for my conservative forecast, I want to go from base to east expansion or something of that sort. That this automatically creates a change in my percentage out here. So if I can change this to maybe 3%, and it gets reflected onto the environment which you see below, which is my forecast getting automatically created. So at any point of time, I will have multiple forecasts or multiple scenarios created as a part of my budgeting process. Now, if I move this across to a geo split, that means I want to geographically split this total number across to different geographies. I can split this by my base, my US East expansion, and also Japan expansion. So maybe in here, I wanted to grow into China. So probably, I can go down into my, this is one important scenario. So next year, for example, I decide that I want to go into China. So I can come here and then I can insert, and I want to say I want China expansion next year. So this automatically now creates a China expansion as a scenario for me. And then I can, for my aggressive growth strategy out here, I can immediately go and select China expansion, which is a new expansion which I wanted to do, which is not in my budgeted, planned numbers for the year, but I can go ahead and then I can say maybe my sales is going to grow 3%, 4%, etc. by the regions. So, Similarly, I can do my channel split and start creating my scenarios on different scales, and I can use these scenarios to build my business plan. So at any point of time, I can go back to my business plan and then start creating or triggering these scenarios in the new year. So this can happen for multi-year or different business functions, which we work on a regular basis in our organizations. Coming back, I think we have a couple of customers. I'll just quickly go through it. Who are using different apps based on this technology and based on this planning. So it's not really sales. It could go down to finance, go down to demand planning, go down to long-term planning, and also different product-related cycles within the enterprise. This is for HP. It's for territory, target setting, quota management, and other processes. Now comes to AirAsia. They use us for financial planning and analysis. There is scenario planning and what if activated as a part of it. I think I'll leave it for Henry to take us further on the same.
Thank you, Samir. Thanks also for introducing me as a young man. I wish I'm young. Just to share a little bit with you, Samir basically asked me to come and give a talk about our experience in terms of launching the ANAPLAN that we have used since late last year. I thought I'd come here and share a little bit on this item or this system, which I think is really one of a new innovation where the CFO can really take a look at it. Right. Asia Expedia, we are a travel company. Alright, it's a joint venture between AirAsia and Expedia. Tony and Expedia wanted to come together and take a cut of the travel pie, knowing that you'll grow. So our business basically spread from the North Asia, China, to Southeast Asia, to India. Right, looking at two brands, Expedia and also the AirAsia Go brands itself. Right. When I joined the company was a new setup some 2.5 years ago. When I joined the company, I know it's a new setup, I know it's a new joint venture. We don't have a lot of resources. We're pretty lean, and the team we have is pretty, few of us, and we kind of have to work around what we have. So after spending 3 months into the job, I was looking at the file that we have in terms of our planning, in terms of forecasting. Yeah, we were very much on Excel, right? Every forecasting exercise, I kind of have to send out 30 megabyte files to all my users and say, okay, please help me to fill out this information, right? 30 megabyte files, right? Sometimes I have to use things like WeTransfer, Dropbox to send it to them, right? And every channel is like coming back to me and say, oh, Henry, thank you, 30 megabyte files, now my system hanged, right? So looking at it, I had a lot of challenge. Okay, what I want to do, I was looking at the files we have, the input that we need to put, and I know I can't go up to Tony, I can't go up to my CEO, CFO and say that, oh no, I need to have a 500 million or 500,000 K investment into my budget system. So I was looking at it, I was looking at what we need to do. Our business was pretty complex in terms of the point of sales that we have, the business that we have, alright, in terms of how we turn our book revenue into the stay revenue, right? And the planning process itself, I mean, it's a new company, we're trying to streamline the process, alright, and there are a lot of changes, and each and every week I have my CEO coming to me or I have my CFO coming to me and says that, what if, I take out this by 10%, what if I bring down this China by 20% because of the political issues between China and Japan, So I have all these scenarios coming to me, and I have big headaches every day, trying to piece everything together. And my team is like working 24 hours, trying to generate new things for the CFO and the CEO, right? So basically, I told myself, I can't rely on Excel, all right? I know Excel is a very flexible tool, but I know I cannot rely totally on Excel. I cannot be sending out, all these files to people every time. So basically, I went back to my good old friends, Samir, which I know him for the last 20 years, right? He was doing something else and I moved on to do something else after the first job together. And then I told him, say, I know I was looking for a budgeting tool, and he came and introduced to me ANAPLAN itself. Right? I took a look at it. Basically, it kind of made the requirement I wanted. Looking at the things that we were doing, I know we still have to rely on ourselves, not 100%. All right, and this tool itself, you look at it, look at the demo that Samir has given. It kind of, not diverting too far away from what our user has been using all this while, using the Excel, right? So people are still very comfortable in putting in the entries that they want, right? We don't have, I know I don't have to invest a lot of money in terms of the upfront, all right? So it's something that at least my management are comfortable with, to say that, okay, let's put some money in terms of building up the system, all right, which is good. And taking away from the panel discussion just now in terms of the business expanding, at the same time you have to manage your cost. Okay, this was where I was, okay, in terms of the situation, right? Definitely in the joint venture we are expanding from Japan to China to Southeast Asia in all these point of sales. So we have all the head of department coming back to our CEO, CFO and says that, okay, I need 5 headcounts here, I need 3 headcounts here, I need to invest people here, I need to put people in this country. So with all these things, of course, we need to make sure that our planning is accurate before we invest all these costs into it. So I was looking around for the different systems that we have. I mean, being in the field for the last 15, 16 years, I came across a few budgeting tools, and I was looking around, and I thought, ANAPLAN really gave the best value for now in terms of the innovation, in terms of meeting the requirement we have. I would say, I mean, coming from a previous industry, tobacco is really stable, right? Moving into the travel industry, which is a very dynamic industry. I thought this change kind of really give me a different perspective to the planning, to the analysis that we are doing, and the tool itself kind of really made the requirement that we're looking for. So I really urge the CFO to really have a second look into the system. I mean, you have your traditional system. This is something that is really good. I mean, speaking from the bottom of my heart, not trying to sell for ANAPLAN because I wouldn't work for them and they're fine. All right, I thought it's something that it really helps in terms of business, in terms of really putting a different perspective to what you think in terms of the FP&A portion, right? So in terms of the deployment, all right, it kind of gave me a shock. Okay, all the while, when we were in the previous company, when we thought deployment is easily 6 months to a year. Okay, when we talk about the very first deployment, all right, the very first model that came up, we did it in 6 weeks. And all this while, because the team is really lean, I don't have an IT person. I cannot go up to my CFO and say, okay, I need a project manager, I need an IT person to support me in the system. Everything was very much done by me and my team itself. All right, we set up the model, all right, we do the formulas that is behind, and all this can be done basically very much from finance itself. You don't need external help in terms of IT support. You don't need a project manager to come down to come and set up a table for you and everything. You can kind of build the model yourself. So this is really helpful for us. And today everything is kind of rolled up. Of course, we are in the stage of enhancing our reports, enhancing a lot of the graphic that's behind in terms of the reporting. But we kind of we are very proud of ourselves in terms of building up this model in such a short while, and meeting the necessary requirement in terms of our end consumer, what they are asking for, the reports that they are looking at, and it really makes the planning so much easier for us, right? So much for now. I hope in the later session, if you have a chance just to look at the model itself.
I have activated the engine mode, and there's zero vote. This is my question. So
okay, I'll give you a ballpark figure.
$1 million.
$10, yeah, I wish. We pay about 100K for the first year, alright? That involves the storage space that you pay for the cloud solution, alright, the users. Okay, we have roughly about 50 users right now, right? So you pay for this storage, okay? Of course, if you want to pay more to ANAPLAN, you can engage their services in terms of helping you write formulas and everything, alright? But if not, you can do all this by yourself, and we can't, alright? If not, Tony will be coming down to me and say, no, you're out of your job, so we don't pay so much.
That was very transparent, just saying the value.
100K ringgit or 100K US dollars?
Sing. Okay, by the way, I'm from Singapore.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have time until the next one, so let me look at this one. How to improve budgeting and planning accuracy in a dynamic business environment.
Alright, I think all of you all probably have gone through the same kind of budget sessions, okay, whether you are in your rolling forecast model or you are in your yearly budget cycle or in a quarterly, right? In terms of improving, of course, really, you have to understand the business itself, right? So, all of you understands that, we as finance person, we don't just sit behind and just churn out numbers and read out from numbers and say that, okay, this is how we should be budgeting, not knowing the business itself. We need to know in terms of the strategic directions where we want to head in 5 years' time, in 3 years' time, right? And with all these goals that's been set, right, we can, plan, and it's really through having a good system, a good planning, right, coupled with your long-term strategy goals, right, you can really come up with a more accurate planning, right? Of course, in a more dynamic industry like the travel industry, where a lot of things will affect, alright, when you have SARS, it will affect, alright, when China is not happy with Japan, it will affect you, when Korea fight with Japan, it will affect you, okay, when the Indian rupees has gone up, alright, it will affect you. So we have all these factors that we have to consider and build into our model itself, right? And all these kind of will take time for you to kind of engage them and trying to understand the model that is behind. And when you start building all these things into your model, of course it will help you to gain better accuracy and more transparency in your model.
So Henry, can we say that your company accuracy is 100% now?
I don't dare say it's 100%, but definitely we have improved a lot, and I dare say that the management is very happy right now. Okay, and as I'm speaking now, they've just gone out to US to do their presentation, and they are very comfortable with the numbers that were presented. Let's see what happens.
So this is the investor presentation looking at forecast for the next.
Yes, they are looking at the plan for next year. Yeah.
So in terms of the difference between actual and forecast, I should say like 5% maybe variance.
Okay, our year-on-year growth for most of the market, okay, range from, okay, our very stable biggest market in Japan is about 30%, alright, and range from developing market, you can come out to some 100, 200, 300%, right? So very much depending on the situation, and a lot of things does happen, okay, during your planning to, the actual days that happen, like I say, when you get the Japanese yen, okay, from 65 moving up to let's say 80 something in Sing dollars, all right. So all this will affect you, and we kind of like put everything in terms of the planning, do as much or as accurate as we can, all right. I don't dare to say that it's 5%, but at least it's at the level that our management is pretty comfortable, and it can really help us to kind of plan ahead, right, in the future month what we want to do and anticipate the changes.
And I imagine the forecasts are changed anyway, depending on what's happening.
Yes, and of course we need to continue to improve our process in terms of moving from quarterly process to a rolling forecast process. Yeah.
We have time for one more question, and I'll ask. I want to ask a question about the Zeppelins, because you are not actually in the airline industry, but this is really interesting. Instead of having airplanes, this is the Zeppelin, the Hindenburg, and things like that, which we know what happened to that one, but maybe they have changed the technology. Okay, last question. What processes do you put in place to ensure the scenarios developed are robust and relevant to your activity?
Okay, I will share this with my peers and with the business manager. All right, there are always debates about whether it should be a top-down process. All right, you have the CEO, CFO sitting in the room together with maybe myself, just to come up with the numbers and be happy with the numbers and say, okay, let's go in and present, okay, 30% growth year on year, right? Or you want to have a top-down, long-term strategy, all right? You set the goals. At the same time, you have bottom-up people who do the planning. And I think it's a good gauge whenever you have a top-down and a bottom-up, and you can find a balance in between and see, and it's a good counter check, a good check when you have a top-down and bottom-up to say, okay, are we planning, or are we, setting a goals that is according to the plan that the people on the ground are setting, all right? Because the people on the ground, the market managers, the channel, where we call the channel managers, where we have people in charge of mobile, we have people in charge of the travel agents, and we have people in charge of the SEO, SEM, all these are technical terms, search engine optimization, search engine marketing. Right, so we have this different group of people that's doing the planning. At the same time, when we set a goal of 30% or 50%, when they start planning, all right, even without knowing all these goals that's been set, are we coming close? Are we coming close to the numbers that we have set? So I think this kind of help in terms of the planning process to do a two-way check from the top down and from the bottom up. I know this has been my view all this while in terms of after spending so many years in this area. I think it's a good approach. All right. Maybe some of you might feel otherwise coming from other industry. Yeah.
One last question, because we have SAP here. I'd just like to ask this question. How can ANAPLAN work with other complex systems such as SAP, Oracle, or IBM? And maybe that's...
let Samuel answer this. We do have very complex system coming from two parent companies, Expedia and Asia Expedia. I can rest assure you, I'm like, every month I'm merging like 6 or 7 different systems. All right. Okay, let Samir answer this on my behalf. Yeah.
Thank you. That 100K was, I didn't expect.
You get a discount,
we have connectors to these systems, like Henry is using Hyperion, and currently you're using Hyperion, and SQL, and there is some Oracle, there is an ERP there. So there are connectors by which you can connect to these systems, and so the data integration is not a big issue. I think it's all the flexibility which you give on the front end and the performance which you give to the system so that it can churn out a scenario-based process. And in their case, they take transactions from the internet, and that is the one which is driving the plan numbers in terms of the revenue.
So essentially, your solution sits on top of the ERP and everything else.
Yeah.
It does not replace.
Yes, it doesn't, and it's mobile. It's on your iPads. You don't need to do anything else other than that. It's mobile, it's cloud, and it's social. This is the nexus of forces which Gartner is trying to promote.
Thank you so much. And I hope that not everyone would want to spend 100K, because now we have set the benchmark, and everybody will say, "Hey."
Kurt is laughing. Thank you guys, and hey Henry, thanks a lot. Yeah?